Look at what's around the wetland. It's apartment buildings, condos, more houses, more shopping centers. How many shopping centers does Federal Way need? More fast food restaurants. And here is this jewel in the middle of all that.
First met Ilene Marckx and Frances Marckx. Ilene first. Actually, she invited me out to see her dead bird collection, which she had gotten out and had displayed on plywood boards in the garage. She only got it out, she said, a couple times every 2 or 3 years.
The youngest I can remember her passions were for the natural flowers and trees and shrubs of Washington State.
The first time I went actually through the Hylebos Wetlands was the American Association of University Women in Federal Way had decided to take a field trip, partly because Ilene was a member and was talking about it at every meeting. And we finally said, okay, we will go, we will see what this Hylebos is all about. And Ilene took us through the Hylebos, and when we emerged from this incredible first growth forest, wildlife everywhere, peat bog, sinkholes, all manner of interesting features, we went, this is an urban wonderland. And so we decided we needed to save it. And we didn't make the decision in a formal setting. We made the decision as we walked out of the Hylebos saying, we need to save this.
Well, Ilene referred to it, at least the initial effort, as a long, bloody struggle. And the reason for it is because she had to capture the attention of people about this system, about its value as a natural resource, and sort of get people invested in its protection, preservation long term at a time when Federal Way, the area around her, was growing rapidly, and so she had an uphill battle.
Anybody who grew up in Federal Way, even then as well as now, knew that South King County needed this facility. We had a surge of apartment complexes growing in the region at that time. And we had a lot of folks who did not have access to the kind of refuge that this provided.
It was unique, and we had to really define it, talk about its value, and talk about how it needed to be saved at that time, that it was imminent in terms of development that was coming in surrounding it.
Working with Ilene was great. She did cajole and contact, I guess you could even say badger, every elected official, every citizen activist, every interested group she could find to make sure they understood what was at risk here with regard to the Hylebos, and that its preservation was something not only she and her husband would care about, but also the community if they came to understand it.
The process of, from beginning to end, the Marckxes started in about 74, 75, working on the process of getting this noticed by people, first of all, in the community. It was almost a full 10 to 12 years from the time it was declared a natural area until it opened officially in 1991. So it was informally 5 to 6 years, and then more formally 11 to 12 years. We lost at one point in the legislature by 1 vote. The vote was the lieutenant governor. We had forgotten to lobby the lieutenant governor. And I quit all activism for a whole 24 hours. I was so angry. How could we have gotten this close and not thought that there could be a tied vote, and that we should have lobbied? It took 24 hours to get over that. and then we went back at it. So and telling this story will, if nothing else, create a situation where other people will take on projects that are for the good of the community and the region.
Fortuitously, Chris Carroll came on the scene, a unique individual who actually grew up in this region, had an intrinsic belief in the mission of the Marxists, and more importantly had a personality that got well with them as well as politicians and the private sector, and he was the maestro to take the baton after they passed away and really bring everything together into a crescendo.
When Ilene found out I was a nature writer from Federal Way, she said, this guy has got to see the West Hylebos Wetlands. Somehow she tracked me down. She called me up, she introduced herself. She said she had this wetlands that I had to see. I was intrigued, so I came out here to meet her. And we spent about 2 hours walking around the park, and she spent a lot of time with me describing all of the species that were here and why it was so important. And like many people, I fell in love with the park. It was love at first sight. And by the end of the day, Ilene had told me that I needed to be the editor of the group's newsletter, and that led to joining the board of directors. The board asked me to become the group's first executive director. Urban conservation is really the classic, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty venture. I've run into a lot of people over the 10 years I've been associated with the Friends of the Hylebos who've said, you know, why should we bother with Hylebos Creek, or why should we bother with Thornton Creek? These places are so urbanized already. You know, what hope is there that we can sustain nature in these urban environments? And I really think it's, for me, it's really a question of faith. It's not a question of science. We don't have a scientific answer to that question. But those of us that love the natural environment as a component of our urban communities, and believe that we can sustain that. We have the faith that if we help provide the space for nature, that nature will keep things running.
I've been doing wetlands work since 1986, and when I first started, wetlands were still perceived by the general public as a nuisance. You know, they were nasty areas that bred in mosquitoes and were just annoying to have on your property because it meant you couldn't expand your garage. Now I think people understand that they are not only beautiful natural areas and that we all need that, but they also are coming to understand about the functions of wetlands in the landscape and how they improve water quality and they prevent downstream flooding, and people have become very educated about salmon since they were listed as endangered species.
In 1999, the Friends of the Hylebos expanded its mission beyond the West Hylebos Wetlands and the park. We became aware that we couldn't really do a good job of protecting and enhancing the wetlands if we didn't address the problems of the larger watershed that it was connected to. And in 2003, that led to the development of the Hylebos Creek Conservation Initiative. The goal of the initiative is to protect, preserve, and restore 745 acres of stream, wetland, and forest habitat, including the West Hylebos Wetlands, to string them together in a continuous nature preserve that stretches from the West Hylebos all the way down to the mouth of Hylebos Creek at Tacoma's Commencement Bay.